Hello. Hi, hi. Okay. I'm gonna learn. I am like testing out ad stuff just to make sure that like I know what the hell I'm doing because I did like switch a few things. So if you see some messages in that, I'm just trying to work out like trying to see if I can get it to where ads will run at like the very when I'm doing my like starting soon, so that hopefully they won't run during the first hour or so, but I think I set it up wrong, so I think it's going to anyway, which is like sucks. But I mean, I think most people who are going to be here today are subs, so I don't think it'll be much problem for y'all. I'm trying to get that sorted out so it's like a little bit easier for people. But hello, Ultra Pumpkin. I'm excited. I saw your messages, Ultra, that you're waiting to flex your manga addiction. I did prepare even some, I dug and found some like scans of specific panels even to discuss that like I personally found. So if there's maybe any that like you have in if you want to like send in like Discord or something even potentially that you want me to pop up on screen, I can if that works. Scan Lady Manga right now is sweet. Yeah. Okay. Ooh, okay, I guess I'm just gonna start with maybe two nights I can put. See, that's exactly what I did. When I first started Goodnight Punpun, I just started on a whim because like, okay, my favorite manga, like manga of all time is Monster. That's my favorite manga. I love seinen mangas, and I saw Goodnight Punpun glazed a lot online in manga spaces of seinen fans, so I was like, I'll check it out. And then I read the entire thing in like 3 days. The only reason I stopped is because I had to go to sleep because I had class because I was in college. So I did the same thing, Pumpkin. Okay, so I think first we'll just ask because I just want to kind of like get into it because I've been wanting to discuss it with people who've actually read it because nobody I know has actually read it. Um, how do you guys what do you guys think about it? How do you do you how would you rate Goodnight Pup Hunt? I guess is a good. How was your overall like feeling of how good it? Did you find it good? Did you find it bad? Painfully relatable at times. I'm never gonna forget it. Yeah. 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 I mean, like again, I think my specific like review on my manga review thing that I keep track of personally was like 10 out of 10. Don't know if I would recommend someone to read this because this shit hurt. You know? The yeah, that's kind of I too had a similar. There were many things about Punpun that I related to until you reached the tipping point in the story where you're like, I don't want to relate to Punpun anymore. I don't want to see myself in Punpun anymore. But Punpun's turned into the devil. I don't know if I want to see myself in Punpun anymore. Good writing purely from the emotions evoked me to say it. The experience was pain. Yeah, it really is. It's one of those stories where like you hope it's going to get better, but you know it won't. You know? Like, and every time things seem to get better, you kind of just have this feeling of like, okay, when's the crash coming? You know? Okay, yeah, see, exactly. So I think I set up I think I set up the ads incorrectly. So whoops. Well, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna figure it out. I thought I did this good. Apparently, okay. So apparently it wants to run in the okay. I think what I'll do is I'm gonna turn reroll off and then just manually do it at my starting soon. So that way I think it should be good then for an hour. I think that's what I'll do. Okay, sick. Yeah. Damn it. I tried. But yeah, it's God, there's so many instances where things seem like they're finally going good and then it nothing can ever stay good. And honestly, that was something I think I related to the most with Punpun was besides like mommy issues and all that kind of shit, you know, but like the thing I think I related to the most with Punpun is his like eventually debilitating fear of everything feels too good right now. Something's going to go wrong. This person is going to do something to me. Like his absolute lack of trust and like lack of faith in his life turning around, I think that's something that I really struggle with because I too came from a household where if things seemed like they were going well, something was going to happen and everything was going to go back to square one or even worse. That was probably the thing I saw myself in with him the most that like I guess you could say like disturbed me the most because that's not something I see often. I feel like as a reflection in a lot of media, at least as well done as with Punpun, because like regardless of seeing you know, the events of like being abused by basically every person in his life, but also just seeing even like little things, you know, like, oh, I think this person's not gonna want to be my friend anymore. I think I'm gonna get fired from my job, you know, like even just little things like that, not even necessarily on the same grand scale of like X person is going to abuse me, you know, which still most of the people Punpun knew did do that, but you know, unfortunately. I also personally I like to think of Punpun as like a I like to think of it as like a three-part story of like there's childhood Punpun, there's Punpun when he's just an adult and he's with Sachi, the girl with the glasses, the mangaka, and then there's the Aiko part of him being an adult. I think of those as like in my mind that's where I section the like I guess you could say the end of like actual volumes of his life is like when he moves out of his parents' house and meets Sachi and the mangaka and they start dating, and then when he runs back into Aiko and decides to fucking run away with her. It also hurt because like okay, this is something a subject I want to get everyone's opinion on because it's a very people have very strong opinions on this character. How do y'all feel about Sachi? Sachi, the glasses, the mangaka that he dates. You love her? Okay, I do too. I I also love Sachi. I love her. I I really liked her. I will admit, like I was unsure at the start because of Punpun's history. It's a nope from me. Okay, here's the thing. Would I date her? No, no, I don't think I would date her. I don't think I would date her personally. Even if she was like even if I was like into women. I don't know if I would date Sachi, but I liked that Sachi. I don't know if I want to use the word like not necessarily humble him because it's not like he had narcissism issues, but I kind of like that Sachi served herself in a lot of ways as like a reminder to Punpun that like you're not the only one going through fucking shit, you know? Because that was another thing too that I thought that was the most interesting part about Sachi coming into his life was him having to then confront that like yes, maybe growing up he was the kid who had the most problems, and yeah, he still probably does have more problems than the average person, but we're all adults now. Everybody's got shit that's fucking them up, and you can't use that to excuse bad behavior, excuse bad work performance. Like I thought it was kind of interesting that she served to like kind of break that mind, kind of like break that bubble he had of like, woe is me, I'm the only one, and kind of tell him like, you really aren't, is the thing. And like, you know, I get it, you got shit going on, but you're kind of an asshole, you know? And I thought that was really interesting to see. Because I think she provided, I think Sachi kind of represents the, you know, she's not a therapist friend and or girlfriend. She's the person in your life that will tell you things in, to be honest, a pretty mean way to really illustrate the truth. And like, that's not always a fun thing to hear, and it's not always, usually that there's a reason those kind of relationships don't last long, because a lot of people don't want to have to hear that kind of stuff, which I understand. Me too, bestie, you know? But I think it was interesting that basically it was like she was packaging what he needed to hear in a way that, like, she was packaging what he needed to hear, but just in a meaner, more blunt way, you know? She wasn't coming to him with a, oh my poor baby, oh my, woe is me. Because, like, at that point, she didn't really know the guy like that. And, like, you know, she's like, you're an adult. You know, like, I'm not gonna baby you. And I just thought that was an interest. I think a lot of people just hate her because, unfortunately, it would have been. I think the issue is that was the only way Punpun was informed of a lot of his problems, was through the Sachi way. But I wouldn't necessarily put that blame all on her, because I think that's just more of a testament to Punpun's lack of social circle and Punpun's lack of support, that unfortunately he never got the kinder, more it's not your fault little one support that a lot of people really need to get when they're in their teen years. And his first instance was with Sachi, who called him like a fucking dickhead, basically, which is like, yeah, that's gonna do some psychic damage, you know? Akiri, she's a character who's capable of letting go of the past, which makes her unique. Most people can't do that in the story, and yeah, she tries to maintain her agency throughout and doesn't blame her problems on God or the universe or society. I don't think I would be the person I would with all my friends. Yeah, I think Sachi was just kind of like, she represented the embodiment of, I guess the best way to phrase it is the rude awakening of adult society. That like, adult society isn't gonna care about your trauma and isn't gonna care about what you've been through, you know? You still gotta get up every day, you gotta clock into work, you gotta go to class, you gotta do all that shit. Like, you can't get away with it like you can as a teenager, and that's a really hard pill to swallow. It is. I think that's kind of why. If you're familiar with the concept of super ego, I've read she represents the side of the author himself, which I saw. I could definitely see that. Because, like, Sachi's problem was, like, I think Sachi also represented a good aspect of, she was able to move on from the past, which a lot of people can't do. But at the same time, she still couldn't move forward, if that makes sense. She could get past her past issues, but she was stunted, she was stagnant, she was just stuck in the same thing every day, you know? That was her problem, is like, I think basically, like, Sachi and Punpun they were like similar people, just at different parts of the process. And I do think that Punpun would have been better off sticking with Sachi, not even necessarily romantically. I think even just being friends and having because also another problem with Punpun is like, Punpun can't just be friends with a woman. he doesn't know how, to put it bluntly, like he doesn't know how to be friends with a woman. He is sadly, partly due to what his step-aunt did to him, like he can't, and like his lack of being around his mother and things like that. He doesn't know how to be friends with women without there being romantic or sexual ties to it. And I do think, and I think Sachi I think Sachi felt more romantically for him than sexually, but just sees that as like a logical step, you know? I think both of them I think both of them would have done way better as just friends and roommates, you know? But it is like a realistic thing of them ending up getting together, because I feel like a lot of people feel pressured to get with a male or female friend. In the queer community, the disaster couple with complementary mental illness and trauma that ends in despair is way too common. Uh, Sachi, hold on. Um, Sachi and Punpun really just like hardcore trauma bonded, and I think they formed a very like codependency on each other, which just was not mutually healthy. I do think Sachi was healthier for him than others, but he needed like actual professional help. I think it's impossible, but you need a very certain person to guide them. I don't like the idea of it being impossible for someone to think it's impossible. No, I mean like I when I say like I don't think he can, I mean like at where he is in the story, I don't think he can be friends with a woman without feeling like he has to be sexual or romantic. I think he full well has potential, and I think at the end it hints at him possibly getting past that. But for majority of the story, just because yeah, he doesn't have a guiding figure, he doesn't have someone to let him know like you don't have to do that, you know? Like it's because yeah, because here's the thing, and I pinpointed in my opinion what I think is what I refer to as the panel where everything like the true, in my opinion, beginning of the end. I'm gonna move over a bit so I could show it. Oh boy, trigger warning, flashbang Midori moment. I think all of like this kind of shit was like this is the beginning of the end in my mind of what like when this happened, this was like I had my like I threw down my fucking phone because I was reading on my phone, and I literally I had that fucking Rick Grimes. I was like, oh no, 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 no. Like this is what I think is when this happened, I was like, okay, Punpun is not going to emotionally recover from this in this story. This is where it was like and the thing is, I knew it was gonna happen. That's the thing. I went into this story knowing he does get raped by his step-aunt. I knew that was a thing. So I was also like so nervous the entire time I was reading because like I was like, when is it gonna happen? And the way it happened was just so much worse than I could have imagined, honestly. And like he's just a little baby. He's just a little guy. Like he was literally like what, like 14 at the most, wasn't he? Like he was like a little baby. Like he was oh my god. I came into it seeing 9.9 and thinking, "Oh, this seems like a good read." Yeah, I saw people's reviews on it on like TikTok and stuff, so I knew it was fucked up and I knew it got into a lot of stuff like that. But absolutely curious how Pokemon ends up in the reverse of UH. Yeah. I have so many mixed feelings on his uncle. I really do. I have so many mixed, like, Yuichi. I can't form a cohesive opinion on you because there's so many things that I hate about him that make me angry, that it, especially like rereading it, because I think too there's like an Ultra, you'll understand that I think there's a certain feeling of rereading it and seeing how his uncle is, and kind of being like, damn, you became an aunt, like, you know, like, you just let your wife sexually abuse your nephew because you're fucking desperate, and like, you're also a fucking Mr. I like him younger. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, uh, God. I think too, I admit, I think the reason I have a hard time, I think the reason I have a hard time fully 100% hating him is because in a way, I kind of relate to Punpun in having the, I guess the best way, and maybe like having the person growing up that you see as like your, okay, shit's bad, but at least I have them, you know. Shit's bad, but at least they care for me, you know. They want me to be okay. Like, they, sometimes we like have funny jokes, and sometimes we like get to do fun things together, and like, oh, this is so much better than being stuck with like my mom or other people, you know? Like, oh, this is it, you know, this is cool. This is like someone I actually have. And then as you get older, you find out that they're just a horrible fucking person. And that's a really hard thing to stomach. He let it happen. It really shattered the whole, exactly. That's, you find out, because like, I didn't have, uh, I was never assaulted by a family member, but I have family members who I know are interested in me in such ways. And they were family members that I was trusted and things like that. And I didn't realize till I was older, and they said certain things that like kind of hit a red flag for me. And then I remembered a lot of stuff that was like, oh, this might not have been innocent, you know? That's kind of how it felt. Like, seeing Ichi with Punpun and with Midori, like, really reminded me of that feeling of like, because also like, I mean, obviously he never touched Punpun or anything like that, but he let his wife do it. And like, for me, you know, they never did anything, but I know they thought about it. And it still has that, it's still like, they also kind of pride themselves on like, I wasn't the one who did it, you know? I didn't actually do it. But you kind of, yeah, you can't see them the same. And at the same time, you want to like hate them with all your guts, but at the same time, you can't really, because for so long you only knew them as your nice like superhero person. It's a really hard thing. That was another thing that was like, I saw a lot of myself in Punpun with, and that was really rough. Kind of overthinks everything until he does whatever he wants and then just sort of justifies it. But I also kind of liked him because he could have been a good guy if he just tried. Yeah, he was like, honestly, he was like a pretty good guy until he started looking for a girlfriend, and then you found out a lot of the fact that bro does not have legal tastes, and the fact that he's so desperate to just have somebody that he's willing to put because like Punpun is his nephew, but he's essentially his child. He's willing to put his child in harm's way because he doesn't want to lose his wife that he doesn't even really give that much of a fuck about. Like, he honestly just kind of like manic pixie dream girls the hell out of her and is willing to sacrifice Punpun if it means keeping her around, which is just like also a really unfortunately depressing reality for a lot of people. I know there's a lot of yes. The underage girl that he was trying to get with, yeah. Yeah. He's definitely a pedophile. He 100% is, and he's just doing the like quote next like he's one of those guys who goes, well, I'm not doing anything, and it's like, okay, but you're still thinking it, you know? Like, he likes her because yeah, she does look younger, she is younger, and it's yeah, it's unfortunate that there are a lot of parents, male and female, who are willing to offer their kids up on a platter, basically, in order to keep their partner around. You also could make the argument, too, that he also partly probably just didn't care because he himself is into youngins, so... like, why, you know, he's honestly, I feel like he'd probably be more upset about it in a like I was cucked way than like, oh, she's abusing my child way, because he's that fucked up, you know? He probably didn't even like, that's probably why he was so fine with Midori, because like he knew that she had to have been into that. He probably used the all too common, I would have loved having sex if I was 40. Yeah. He definitely was fine. Like, the reason he was fine with Midori is because he himself is a predator. He's just a predator that has never been able to properly act on it. He tried with that one girl, but he's never been able to really successfully do it. And so he's not gonna get mad at her for doing predation when he does predation, you know? It's just... And I know, sadly, there is also, with a lot of parents who will keep abusers around their children, some of them do have a mindset, unfortunately, of like, they are more upset about it in a cheating aspect, as gross as that is. But they're also like, well, it's with someone who's like my family, so it's not as bad as like a stranger or something. It's really gross. It's really fucking gross. But yeah, Yoji's really sick until you find out he's a pedophile. And and then suddenly like, yeah, you're not very cool anymore, bro. You're like, oh fuck. And then that's kind of when you're like, oh shit, so Punpun truly never had a chance. Like, because I think that's another thing that I don't want to say I like about Punpun, because it's like, I you know, but I kind of relate, and, sorry, understand is, I like that it is very much a factor that, like, Punpun never had a chance. He never had a fucking chance. There was no way that he was going to grow into a reasonably adjusted person. Like, he was literally spawn camped as like, you are going to have a miserable fucking upbringing, and there is no chance at happiness here. Because I think a lot of people relate to that, because of how their families are and things like that. Dude, and also, like, can I just say another one that I couldn't find the specific panel, but I think another big moment that I didn't expect to, like, hit as much, that I think a lot of people don't really talk about as much, is I think his mom dying was also just way more important than a lot of people, you know, mention. I feel like a lot of people don't mention it because his mom was a fucking bitch. She was. She was a horrible fucking mother. But it's still his mom. And that's his mom at the end of the day, you know? Like, you as a child feel an instinctual love for them, even if they are so horrible to you, because you were literally born to love them, you know? Like, I think because of how just horrific she was to him, people tend to think it didn't affect him, when it very much did affect him. Like, it just affected him in the very... I think a lot of people just didn't recognize that it was affecting him because he wasn't particularly sad. He was more just confused because he didn't know how to go about how... He didn't know how to feel about it. And I think that's a very realistic portrayal of losing a family member that was an abuser. Because I kind of have like a similar thing with, yeah, with your dad. I have a similar thing with my mom. I mean, my mom is alive, but like, I kind of phrase it as like my mom, even though she's alive, sometimes it kind of feels like she's not because of things that she's doing. And she's just very different, you know? And I kind of sometimes think about if I ever get that call, how will I feel about it, you know? Like, how would I feel? And I don't know if I would know how to feel, you know? Yeah, go ahead, Ultra. There's a lot of media that likes to play with poking at real world personal issues. I'll make you reflect your own, and that's the stuff that I enjoy about the manga. Yeah. I think you probably can. Um, what a time for me to leave. I swear it is so perfect. Yeah, no, I agree, Alphonse. I really like... I feel like, too, because I feel like a lot of things, when they do try to talk about these kind of topics, they do it very surface level, versus Punpun, I think, does a really good job at like, no, we are going to explore it, and it's going to make you very uncomfortable. And it's going to make you very anxious, and that's the fucking point. And I think, because there's an argument to be made about media in general nowadays, where a lot of people don't understand how to consume media that makes them uncomfortable or angry or anxious. And I think, because, like, here's the thing. Punpun objectively is a horrible fucking person. Punpun is a horrible man. He is a fucking monster of a person. Like, Punpun, it does not get better, and he reaches the point where he no longer can hide behind the excuse of childhood. Like, Punpun is the cautionary tale of if you never let go and you always hold on to so much anger and hatred and fear, that there's just... you're never not only going to get past that, but you're going to end up doing similar things to people that you as a child would hate and kind of be like, wait, I did those things. It is referenced at the end that maybe there's a chance he does get better, but you know, Punpun is, you know, Punpun's problem is he doesn't break the cycle. He doesn't, you know, he doesn't know how to break the cycle, but the issue with Punpun is he doesn't want to learn. That's the issue, is like, nope, once you become an adult, nobody is gonna tell you for free how to break the cycle. You gotta do that on your own and figure out all of that on your own. And it's fucking hard. It's really hard. And he didn't want to do that, and he just wanted to wallow in his self-loathing. And since Aiko talks, yeah, he just wanted to wallow in his self-loathing, and ultimately it led to him not being as bad as some of the individuals he met, but he did a lot of things that child Punpun would be horrified to know about. People with brains, oh, thank you. It's weird how good they are at make Punpun's perspective as a child very one-to-one with how children really see the world at times. Oh, 100%. There were so many instances of child Punpun where I was like, oh yeah, I did that as a kid. Yeah, I had that moment. Oh, you hear parents screaming in the room, and you're just standing there like, uh, um, ah, like, oh my God, yeah, totally, you know, like where you inherently think that like one parent is better than the other, even though both of them are awful, because at least one isn't directly as mean to you. So clearly that must be the better parent, even if they aren't actually the better parent because you're a fucking child and you don't know how to rationalize like layered behavior and adult behavior. Nature versus nurture, yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think that's why I said, like, I think Punpun, child, teenage and child Punpun is very much a focus on this is what happens when you abuse a child and you constantly set a child up. And there is no way this child is going to turn into a well-adjusted, normal human being. And then adult Punpun then turns around and goes, well, guess what? Unfortunately now, adult Punpun, it is entirely your responsibility because you're an adult now. Even though you yourself are an incredibly abused and fucked up individual who doesn't know where to even start on getting better, guess what? You gotta figure it out on your own. Well, welcome to adult, you know? Like, and I think that's a very realistic approach, you know? Letters being written by his, yeah, the letters by his mom. No, the mom stuff really got me because I was like, ooh, felt. I don't, like, ooh, yeah. I, I didn't expect his mom to be as layered as she was, and I think that was really interesting. But yeah, with Punpun, a lot of that's why I think I get really annoyed when people leave Punpun with the perspective that Punpun is not only a good person, but Punpun is also like completely not responsible for any of the horrific things he did as an adult just because of his child. Like, there's a lot of people who somehow read Punpun and they take it as the first 75% of it is justifying him doing horrible stuff. Like, no, that's not the point. Like, that's not the point. Because he isn't justified in abusing his partners and literally helping to murder a woman. And listen, all I'm gonna say is like, I'm gonna show this one, like, there ain't no fucking justification for anything that this fucking dude put Aiko through. There is there is no justification for anything that he did to her. Like 100%. Like if you don't know, we're talking about I do like every month we read a manga series type story type situation, and this time we read Goodnight Punpun, which is a manga about a follows the life of a boy who's severely abused by family, friends, you know, basically the universe itself, and then he becomes an adult and he starts abusing his partners, and he ends up basically spiraling to the point where he leads to one of his partners killing herself. he also threatens to murder her on multiple occasions. He basically just he never escaped the cycle of abuse that he faced. He just stayed in it. It is one of the darker mangakas, yeah. It is one of the darker mangas written, and it's also not in a like shock value, you know. Like for example, Punpun does get raped by his step-on as a child. That is one thing that they show. Nothing about it is graphic in that it's not done in like a fetishy shock value way that a lot of writers do it in comics, you know? Yeah, it shows like enough where you know what's going on, and it focuses more on him and his reactions because it's about him being a victim. But when he becomes an adult, it then showcases how, despite all of what he went through, it's now his job as an adult to figure himself out and to break the cycle of abuse. And it's a really hard thing to do because nobody gives you instructions, you know? Nobody gives you instructions. Nobody tells you how to do it. Not for free, at least. You gotta figure that shit out all completely on your own. And it's really fucking hard. As someone who also had similar experiences of coming from a really horrific upbringing to becoming an adult, from the point you realize what you don't want to become like, yeah, the thing with Punpun is he is a self-sabotager to the max. That's another thing, and that's sadly a product of a lot of people, myself included, who have those kind of upbringings, where anytime something's going good, he doesn't know how to handle it because he's not used to something being positive, that he gets paranoid and he ends up leaving or sabotaging so that he can go back to chaos, because chaos is what he knows, you know? Chaos is comfort for him in a weird, fucked up way. And I think that relates to a lot of people who have been through that. It's funny because there are people who don't have a messed up childhood and still become the monster. Yeah, because I think definitely for sure. Because I think specifically Punpun, I think a lot of it is a kind of a discussion on how far can I was abused as a child and teenager carry your be a justification for your behavior. How old can you be? How much can you go through? How like long before you can't hide behind that anymore and you have to put in the work? And it's really hard because Punpun didn't put in the work. He didn't want to. The thing about Punpun is ultimately is he didn't want to get better despite what he said. He claimed he wanted to get better, but he didn't want to go through the hard work of thinking back on what happened, working through his feelings. He didn't want to do that. He just wanted to ignore it, and he thought, if I ignore it, it's fine. It's not. I'm saying to someone who also tried to do it that way, ignoring it is not gonna help. Like, I no longer understand the difference between peace and being alone because the chaos thing. Yeah. I'm someone who I tend to be like, I can't be really in silence, and I sometimes struggle really bad being alone because I can't find it comforting in the same way a lot of people can. Like, I can't handle silence. It's, as someone who grew up in a not silent house, you know. I definitely know a lot of people who hate change, but also who pursue as much change as possible. Also, incredibly selfish character. Notice how he didn't rush to save Aiko from her mom's attack until he realized he looked like a coward. Exactly. Because that's another thing about Punpun, is that Punpun, I believe he originally formed his selfishness as like a survival tactic of like, I have to prioritize myself. And then it just molded into, I think once he hit a teenager, to put it bluntly, like, I think the issue is partly because Punpun, similar to a lot of abuse victims, wanted to feel in control of himself and his perception at all times, which is why as a late teen and an adult, he cannot handle the thought of someone seeing him in a way that he either doesn't know how they see him or it's a way he doesn't like, because then he's losing that control of the perception of himself. It wasn't his love of Aiko that motivated him to save her, his own selfish perception of the event. Yeah. Also, Punpun never loved Aiko. That's another thing. I don't like when people, because there's also unfortunately a sad amount of people that blame Aiko, and because Aiko, as a stupid ass fucking little child, was, yes, there is a lot of people, because there is a lot of people who somehow read Punpun and came away with the, like, he got his heart broken at 6 years old, therefore he deserves to become a supervillain, mindset. Like, because also, it's very clearly Aiko was also an abused child. Because that's the thing, too, is Aiko herself was an abused child, abused throughout her entire life. We don't see that, though. We don't even find out that she's really, truly abused till they're adults. Because we're not following Aiko's story. Just like how most people don't know that Punpun is being horrifically abused his entire life. But people don't offer the same charity to her because they're like, well, she did do things that contributed to his self-doubt, because as a kid she told him, you know, if you don't meet me here, like, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna hate you, and then he didn't meet up because something came up, you know, and then she didn't want to be his friend, or her, like, girlfriend anymore after that. Yeah, guess what? That sucks. She's like 7, okay? So is he, okay? She's an abused child, and she's like 7. Chill the fuck out, you know? Like, the fact that basically she's doing, like, lewd style teen magazines that a lot of, unfortunately, like, struggling Japanese girls end up doing, like, you know, she's going through it, but people don't offer her the same charity. And I also will say, I do feel like a lot of people don't offer characters like Aiko and Sachi the same amount of grace. And I don't even think it's just because they're not the main characters. I think it's also just a misogyny thing. Of people blame Sachi and Aiko both for so much of Punpun's problems when, like, neither of them really affect, like, Aiko, the only thing she did to him was as a kid where she's like, I'm gonna kill you if you don't meet me here after recess. And then he couldn't, and then afterwards she didn't want to be his friend anymore. That's all she did to him. As, like, a 7-year-old, mind you. And then Sachi was a grown-ass adult, and she called him some names, and, you know, she was kind of a bitch, but that's it. Like, she didn't really, like, I wouldn't say she, like, mentally abused him, per se. She was just kind of, like, a very blunt, she was one of those, like, I tell the hard truths kind of person. Lack of empathy and perception of those. I think that is definitely a thing of it, but I will just say I've noticed a lot of people who are particularly, like, it's Aiko's fault are guys. You know? Because, like, for example, there's kind of a classic meme even of, like, ask an incel why they're an incel, and it's because a girl when they were 12 broke their heart. She was 12, dog. Like, you're gonna let the actions of a child dictate your entire feelings of women and all, you know, like, she was 12. Guess what? Girls also had shitty experiences with guys when we were 12. We are like, yeah, fuck that guy, but also we were 12. You know, I'm an adult now. I'm not gonna hold the guy that, because guess what? When I was in 6th grade, I too had a guy that I was kind of close with, and then one day after school, when we were about to leave, he wanted to hug me, and I didn't realize because I was self-conscious and didn't know if he was actually or not. And then he got, like, he thought I was rejecting him, and so then after that, he never talked to me the same. And I was, like, I had a hardcore crush on that guy, and that was, like, devastating for 10-year-old Mina. Guess what? He was 10. You know? Like, as a kid, it hurt. As an adult, he was 10. You know, I'm not gonna hold that against him. You know? There's a lot of people that read Goodnight Punpun that hate Aiko and hold Aiko because of her being kind of a little shit when she was like 7 years old. Which is diabolical to me, you know? Like, because guess what? Punpun also was not an angel of a child by any means to some of his classmates. But, like, Aiko really did not do anything to deserve the wrath of him. Also, like, you could make the argument that Punpun, like, I mean, bro showed up and then basically told her, like, I want to have sex with you. That's what I want from you. You know? You know? Bro ran back in, found her again, and that's, you know, he didn't see her as a person. He's like, I think Punpun he never saw her as a person. He saw her as the, he saw her as like the thing, the one that got away, you know, and like, oh, to get the power back, I'm going to do what I wanted to do. After he forced himself, another girl tried to, yeah. Because all I'm gonna say is when he showed up and was like, what I want from you, I want to have sex with you. That's what I want. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. Him doing the, that's what I want, give it to me, please, had very much that energy. So, you know. Oh, it's not gonna take long. Just a bit. You know. Like, he really just, you know, rinse and repeated and did the cycle of, you know, I've been nice to you and did something that you liked. Therefore, you owe me now. And this is what I want from you. Like, also, a lot of people forget too the aspect that he ran, like, a lot of people too, even some people blame Aiko for coming back into his life as if he didn't pursue her when she showed back up into his life. Like, he ran into her and immediately just locked onto her, like, target acquired. You know, she didn't, it's not like she was begging on her hands and knees, you know. Especially because a lot of people forget he ran into her again when he was supposed to go be there for Sachi getting her abortion. You know? Like, he literally abandoned Sachi in her time of need after what he did, you know, because of Aiko. He completely casted Sachi just to the fucking wind. You know, if that's a sad part of life, gotta worry about people expecting something from you with ulterior motives. And because at that point, that's all she knew, Aiko accepted it because that's all she knew, you know? Like, Aiko, unfortunate as it is to say, Aiko was truly the perfect victim for Punpun. As, oh shit, sorry, I'm like throwing shit, my bad. As fucked up as it is to say, like, Aiko was the perfect victim for him to have. Because he did abuse, Sachi in ways. I do think also, I think they just mutually were not a healthy couple on both ends. But he did some very big escalations towards her that just weren't cool, you know? But ultimately, Sachi was a stronger woman in that her will was a lot stronger. You know, Sachi made him feel small in a lot of ways, and he could not handle that. Which I think is also why an interesting detail is when he is with Sachi, like the way his head is drawn is a lot smaller on average versus when he's with Aiko at the end, where his head is like super elongated. Because I do think Sachi made him feel small in a lot of ways because she was so strong-willed and she was so opinionated, and she would tell him when she thought he was being a fucking asshole and when he was being a fuck up and when things were his fault. And he didn't, versus Aiko, who wouldn't. And the closest Aiko came to telling him that, like, you're kind of freaking me out, bro was like, I'm gonna kill you. He's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you if you say some shit like that again. Like, you know, he immediately showed his fucking ass with that. Yeah, Aiko, similar to him, was born a victim, except Aiko... I think Aiko could have broken out of things if she never... truly reuniting with Punpun was the worst thing that ever happened to Aiko. He ruined her fucking life. Like, he truly ruined her fucking life. And it is no shock that she ended up killing herself. Like, he ruined her life. And I think ultimately, I know some people theorize that he actually killed her and then just staged the body and then, like, had a, you know, one of those moments where, like, he kind of sort of, like, didn't truly realize what he did. No, I like to think she, as fucked up as it is, I like to think she killed herself. Because, for one, Punpun enjoyed the power over her too much. He did. He enjoyed the power too much. Two, I think it's a really impactful way to show how bad Punpun is, that she didn't even kill herself and she was stuck with her mother. But she decided she would rather die than be stuck with Punpun for the rest of her fucking life. Like, that's a really fucking intense decision, you know? She decided that, like, she could survive being stuck with her mom that abused her and basically, like, pseudo-pimped her out and shit like that. But being stuck living with Punpun, like, traversing Japan with him, that was a worse than death for her, that she took herself out. And I think that's why I think it's so important that she did kill herself, because I think that was the wake-up call for him, that that's what he realized. And yeah, because exactly, because Punpun couldn't, the part of Punpun that desired to grow and become a better person and become someone that lives in the moment did want to be with her, but the Punpun that desperately holds on to the past could not let go of his hatred of her, because he blames her as... Because it's easier to blame as a child, it's easier to blame another child than it is to blame an adult, because at least you can understand the mentality of a child to a degree. You can't, as a child, rationalize why an adult would do certain things, so it's a lot easier to put your anger onto other children when they might not be the actual, like, core perpetrators. It's... that... I will admit, that was one thing I didn't expect her to do that. I didn't know, that was one thing, like, the only big event I knew is I knew about the aunt thing. I didn't know about that. That was, like, a big, like, in a weird way, like, my gut did, like, sink when I saw that. But at the same time, in like a really fucked up way, I was like relieved for her, as fucked up as it is to say, that, because I don't think I don't think, the thing about Aiko is Aiko is never gonna make it back to Tokyo or whatever. Like, Aiko was never gonna make it back to the city. Aiko was going to die out there. It was just a matter of if it was herself or if it was Punpun. I truly think that. I think that there was never a chance where Aiko was getting out of that situation alive. She chose to do it herself because Punpun, at least if she did it herself, she could finally make a decision with her own autonomy in mind, you know? I think he literally says that it's the first panel. Yeah, I know he does. He says that he will kill her. Well, he talks about killing her a lot. Like, a lot. He's very vocal about it. He does not hide it whatsoever, which is just really fucked up. And Aiko is another one where he just, like, manic pixie dream girled the fuck out of her as well. And, like, I think there's also, unfortunately, like, there's also a lot of people who I feel like on both genders fetishize the relationship between Aiko and Punpun. Because I think inherently a lot of people like the allure of the, it's not a, God, what's it called? It's not a they're not a Bonnie and Clyde couple, you know? A lot of people, I think, like the allure of the couple that's, like, fucked up, but they ride or die for each other, but it's like, I don't think a lot of people understand that isn't them, though. You know? Because they wouldn't ride or die for each other, because he wants to fucking murder her. Thelma and Louise, yeah, they think and it's like, no, it's not that, because she is desperately coded, because also, like, I think, too, because, to put it bluntly, Aiko, as gross as it is to say, is like a perfect fetish for so many men in Japan and even overseas. She's very petite, she's very young looking, she's very just kind of very, very small. She's super submissive, super obedient in her adult years. She's very clingy, she's very passive, yeah. She's willing to accept so much cruelty because that's all she knows. She is she lets him have sex with her whenever he wants. She lets him do whatever because at the end of the day, that's all she's got. You know? Like, that picture of the Japanese office worker that's been going around on Twitter, yeah, formal idol chick. Yeah. Where dudes were literally editing her in schoolgirl uniforms, yeah. A lot of guys fetishize that because it kind of like what I talk about with I speak of with Boyfie a lot of like a lot of misogyny isn't the cartoonish make me a sandwich bitch shit. A lot of misogyny is there are men who hate women but love pussy. And there are men who hate the idea of a woman being a person instead of a select group of tropes that they find attractive that they can fetishize. Because anytime Aiko showed, layers to herself, she got shut down immediately and reverted back to the submissive, meek, obedient girl when we also saw what she was like as a kid and she wasn't even like that. She got turned into that, Because, I mean, think of it of like why, why do harems exist and half the time they're boring as hell because each chick is a select group of tropes that are considered attractive. And they're not allowed to show any other layers to themselves because if there's one layer that the guy doesn't like, they don't want them anymore, you know? Like, they're not supposed to grow, they're not supposed to change, they're supposed to stay exactly how they want them, that's what they want. You know, that's how Punpun is with Aiko, where he doesn't want her to grow as a person. He doesn't want her to get better because he likes her being dependent on him. Yes, he likes her being dependent, he likes her being weak, he likes her being yes Punpun, no Punpun. That's what he likes from her. Because it makes, because another thing too is of like a big thing, and it makes him feel like God. To the point where there's literally a panel during that whole situation where he looks in the mirror and he sees God on his own head. Like, it makes him feel like a god. It makes him feel powerful. And as someone who did not have power throughout his life, he is desperate and relishes for that feeling, you know? He's one of those guys that is desperate for the feeling of power and doesn't care who might be harmed by it. Because, like you said, he's very selfish. Yeah, no, I'm the opposite. I need a partner to tell me what to do. I'm kind of like that as well. Like, I prefer when I can just go brain empty and just, you know, exist because my brain is so in overdrive constantly that the less I have to deal with, the better is how I see it. But I feel like too, it's also a more of a man thing on average, not because like men inherently or nothing, no bullshit pseudoscience like that, but just in a society conditions, I think a lot of boys that they need to be the man of the house, you know, they need to be the one in charge of the woman. And because a lot of, guys, they're also told that, like, as a man, power, being a leader, all that kind of stuff. Most guys, especially in Japan, are gonna be a fucking salary worker who work for some other fucking dickhead. They're not no fucking leader. They're not no powerful person. So the way they get to experience the power is by having power over their home. I think that's sort of what that kind of dynamic of the story was sort of discussing. And because that is sadly a thing that I feel like a lot of guys are conditioned to, and a lot of guys can break out of it, and some guys thankfully weren't in homes. It's also very culture dependent too. But like, as someone who was in the South, very heavy there. In Japan, very heavy there in a lot of places that, you know, especially because there's already just a fetish portrayal of Asian women in general to be submissive and to be, yes sir, no sir. Like, a lot of guys for some reason think that Asian women are just inherently like submissive to men, which is just so stupid, but shows again that they don't really see women as people but as like porn categories essentially. And also, like, I think you might find this funny, Alphonse. There's a lot of guys, too, nowadays that I'm seeing a lot of right-wingers also. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Latinas have unfortunately always been fetishized, in, like, a very hypersexual way. Like, I'm sorry, like, I get the joke, but the, like, we can't have deportation because I can't lose my thick Latinas is like, no, that's still fucking gross. Like, yeah, sure, you're saying you support stopping deportations and stuff, but you're fucking doing it in a creepy, like, sex pest fetishizing a group of, like, no. That's still not, don't say that kind of shit. Like, don't, that's fucking gross. like, sadly, Latino women have always been fetishized in a very hypersexual way, and it's same thing with black women. It's very unfortunate. Versus, like, I feel like I feel like black women and Latino women get very treated in a very hypersexual way, even from when they're young, which is so depressing. White women and Asian women, I feel like more so get fetishized into like, you're supposed to be my submissive, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen housewife, you know? Like, they're seen as the more pure ones, and both different stereotypes are very disgusting and toxic in their own ways towards women and girls. A really weird one, though, that I'm seeing nowadays is this weird right-wing fetishization of Latina women in that, like... Oh, yes, too. Yes, 100%. The amount of, like, the amount of, like... Put it bluntly, creepy-ass women who go after Hispanic guys and treat them like, oh god, it makes me cringe to fucking say it, like exotic pets, to put it bluntly, is so fucking gross. Um, that treat them like, you know, like a toy, like a I'm gonna clap and watch you dance and watch you do, you know, like, you know, ethnic stuff. Like, it's so fucking gross and nasty and icky. And with black men, that's why, like, I do think a lot of, you know, the jokes about, like, you know, BBC, bulls, all that stuff, like, it's really gross in a lot of ways because it reduces them to being, like, brutish and being, like, non-human, and it's just, it's very gross. There's colonialism and fetishization of, marginalized groups. It's just one hell of a fucking thing, but 100% academic, very scientific documenting 90 Day Fiancé. They like women from conservative cultures because they think they'll be easier to control too. Yes, exactly. Because that's what I was going to point out. I've seen a recent, I used to watch that show too. So I get you. Of, I've been seeing a lot of right-wing posts popping on Twitter lately. That's like, there's a lot of guys now, like right-wing Nazi fuckers who are like, I hate the Americanized woman is what they say, because like, oh, they'll accuse you of abuse and get a divorce and stuff. And then they'll post a picture of like a random Latina woman and be like, the average American woman is like, oh, I hate you. The average Latina woman, mi amor, I made you some fucking, I made you I made you some tacos. Oh, do you want me to rub your feet? You've done so well. Oh my god. I'm like, for one, have you ever fucking met a Latina woman? Okay, shut the fuck up, too. But like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, I don't know. It was kind of weird to me because like, when I was growing up because I grew up being one of the like 20 white kids at my school, you know? So like, I was very much involved in those communities. I grew up experiencing, like, my friends getting the hypersexualized treatment. That was really sad and scared, and, you know, we did our best to look out for each other. It's kind of weird now that I'm also, like, it's like, I feel like a lot of Nazi guys are kind of now trying to treat Latina women in the same way that they would treat, like, white women. Of like, now, like, they're these pure, loving, oh, they're gonna just cook you food all day and rub your feet and and it's like, okay, guess what? Yes, a loving woman will do that if she loves you. It's nothing to do with race or culture like that. But for one, do you really think they're gonna put up with that? You know, like, you know, like, you know, like, for one, it just proves, like, I don't know, man, if they love you, yeah, but with the kind of shit you're saying, they're not gonna offer to make you tamales and shit. No, bro. They're gonna be like, you're a fucking Nazi. Get the hell away from me, bro. I gotta be more aware that some women just want me for my race. It's really sad. I will say I find it weird to date other Latinas because it feels like I'm dating a cousin. I also kind of encountered a lot of my friends having similar feelings, especially because all of my friends grew up in very, very big families where their cousins and uncles and stuff were actually like similar in age range to them. And so, like, a lot of my friends had issues of, like, all the guys they knew were friends with their relatives. So, like, they would be at family gatherings and stuff, and, like, they felt like it kind of, like, muddied the water a little bit for them. And they were like, I don't know if I could, like, look at them like that. Like, I had some friends who mentioned similar kind of things like that. Yeah, the fetishization thing is a very weird fucking problem. Like, did you guys see the fucking Sydney Sweeney Levi commercial? I don't. Please tell me you guys saw that on Twitter, because it's fucking weird. Where it's. If you don't know who Sydney Sweeney is, she's mostly known for playing Cassie on the show Euphoria. She also did a rom-com with Glenn Powell, and she did a horror movie where she was like a nun that got like immaculate conception. She's also was the actress that recently sold soap that had like her bath water in it or something. Like, she's a celebrity that has been very fetishized by men because she has boobs basically, and she's white and got blonde hair and blue eyes. So a lot of like conservatives would do the shit where they would post her and be like, yeah, real culture's back, brother. Like, that kind of weird shit. She recently did like a Levi commercial with like American Eagle where it's her putting on jeans in like a very sexual way, which is also really gross because it's like a remake of a commercial did back in the day with an actress that was actually 14 at the time. I believe it was the actress that played the girl from The Labyrinth, if I'm remembering correctly. I might be wrong. So like already weird pedo undertones to it, but as she put on the jeans, she was like, yeah, because I'm Sydney Sweeney and I have great jeans. And like, just having like a blonde hair, white, blue eye woman being like, my jeans are the best. My jeans are great. And it literally says, in all bold words, like, Sydney Sweeney has great jeans. And it's like, this feels a little weird considering the current climate of things, you know? You know. And then Dunkin' Donuts did it too, where Dunkin' Donuts had some guy, I think he's from the show The Summer I Turned Pretty, like a teen romance show, where he was like, you know, like kind of like tan white boy, brown hair, I think blue eyes potentially, where he was like tanning by the pool drinking Dunkin'. He also made a comment about like his jeans or something. I was like, oh god, why are we having so many commercials with white people talking about their superior jeans? Oh shit. Like, oh fuck. And like some people are like, this is a stretch, but at least like Dunkin' Donuts explicitly donated to Project 2025. So I don't know about American Eagle and Levi, but Dunkin' Donuts, yeah, that shit was not. That was definitely intentional. But yeah, we're in scary times, brothers. Be careful. Um, I'll say one thing that I have that's kind of interesting is like, I have like, oh god, it's just so fucking weird. I just thinking about that is just so fucking weird. Oh god. Um, it always reminds me of the conversation of like when I tell people that whiteness isn't real, and then they look at me like I'm stupid, and then I'm like, no, you hold on, give me a second. Give me a second, let me put on my political cap. Okay, I have to explain this. Like, whiteness is a factual construct. Do you want modern evidence? There's a reason that like Hispanic people are slowly being considered white, for one. You know, we currently have a white Latino delegation on censuses and things like that. Latinos are like, Hispanic people are, and I'm just used to saying that because growing up, everyone referred to each other as Latino, so it's just what my brain defaults to. But like, Hispanic people are being slowly considered white in the United States. If you look back in records, Ben Franklin did not consider German people to be white. Ben Franklin described Germans as swarthy non-white. Um, Look at a German, okay? What are Germans now modern historically known for, you know? Like, the Irish, the reason the Irish were treated like shit in America was because the Irish weren't considered white back in the day. The fucking Irish weren't considered to be white people. Like, exactly, yes. Arab people were also a lot of them. Uh, because whiteness is a ever-changing concept that includes as many groups as they want, the only group that will never be considered white are black people. Put it bluntly. We could even reach a point where like Asian people would be considered white. I'm not even like straight up. Like it's insanity that it's ever evolving and changing. So that's like another thing too when I see, you know, that's why some people wonder like why are there some like Hispanic people that are Nazis and far right and stuff. And it's like because they genuinely do consider themselves and see themselves as like one of the good ones, to put it bluntly. And they don't realize that um they don't realize that eventually when the chopping block comes, they're gonna lose their status real fucking quick, you know, once they run out of people to chop. There's a reason fascists love conservative Asian cultures. There's literally a joke that there's nothing more there's nothing more fascist as a white guy than having a POC wife is literally a fucking like joke because it's at this point kind of a common trope. Like unfortunately the amount of like piece of shit Congress members that have like, you know, another joke, libertarian guys with Asian wives, because unfortunately it's a recurring trope, you know, like unfortunately, you know, a lot I have a feeling that the Cuban demographic is gonna start being swept into the conservative guy with a Cuban wife. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I think Cubans are gonna be the next group that are gonna get, you know, yoinked up in that kind of paradox because they're aligning themselves significantly more with right-wing groups. I had a right-wing militia neighbor with a Latina wife and kids. The dwarf with the elf wife meme. Yeah, literally. It's so... It's so... we're I don't want to be like, we're fucked in Doom Post, but like... It's scary times, you know? Be careful. Yeah, I feel like in a weird way, kind of like, even though, like, Punpun is a Japanese boy and the author is Japanese and all the characters are basically Japanese, I do still think it is interesting that in a weird way it did kind of still portray that fetishization of Asian women for the submissive vision, you know, the treating them like a porn category essentially. I thought that was another just like kind of interesting layer to it, and his treatment of women, because God, Punpun is very bad at treating women. Like generationally pretty bad. Like really is like carrying it through the fucking family. Poor treatment of women. Trying to think of like what are other things about it that really like stood out to me. It's like for me personally, like those were the things that really were what stood out and were impactful to me too. And oh, I guess I could talk about like the ending for a moment of Punpun, where he's now back in the city, and the black guy in the manga, they're, yeah, that was crazy. That was a fucking moment. I wonder if it was supposed to be of a, like, I'm kind of curious though if it was the author purposefully doing that, or if it was supposed to be more of a Punpun's fucked up perception of people, you know? Yeah, he did threaten to sue a child, which was kind of funny. Not gonna him trying to sue a child was kind of hilarious. I'll admit that was kind of fucking funny. That was kind of funny. Yeah, that part was fucking weird. I'm curious if the author was just like, I'm just gonna do some uber racism right now, or if he was trying to do a, like, look at how uber racist Punpun is, and it just did not come across the greatest, you know? I'm kind of curious on what the fuck was the... I'm curious what the angle was in that, because I honestly totally forgot about that until I reread it, and I was like, oh yeah, you, ooh. Yeah. Forgot about you. I'm kind of curious what the fuck his point, his mindset of that was, because that was kind of crazy. Um, well, I saw something that some people mentioned too, because like a lot of people think that, yeah, a lot of people think that maybe he kind of like, so a lot of people do see, because like God, for example, a lot of people do see God as like more of like a some people see him as like an Asian guy, some people see Punpun's God as a black guy. You know, there's kind of, some people aren't, you know, some people see him as Blasian, you could say. Some people wonder if like the point of that was like Kid Punpun saw him and then like maybe took inspiration or whatever. I mean, I always read his god as like just like a weird Japanese dude, but I don't know. It seems, I don't even know what the but he is called like Afro God, I guess, by a lot of people. So yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah, I kind of wonder if it was supposed to be like, oh, he saw him and that sort of like affected how he sees God, or you know, or just maybe the mangaka was just like, I'm gonna do some racism. I don't know, but it was fucking weird. But yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing. Unfortunately, yeah, he would show up around Aiko. I think it was also too maybe to showcase that, like, you know, he was maybe Aiko's reoccurring odd character, you know, since like he had his own. Because I was reading at 3 a.m., but I remember a panel where two people are sitting at the table and they're both black guys. Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe he was like potentially maybe like a god figure for Aiko, or maybe just like he was an early stage of, or like a manifestation of what Punpun saw as God. I feel like it might have been something like that. Could have been illustrated a lot better. At least like didn't have to do the lips part. That was kind of crazy. That kind of over the top. That was a bit wild, Manga. I see what you were going for, but maybe shit that one out. I will say too, I feel like another thing, I guess talking about before I get to this, I'll talk about again what I meant of like the end of when you see Punpun and he's seemingly like a normal person now at the very end of it, and he runs into like some of the people he used to know, and like some people were mad of like, I guess you could say, why does Punpun get a happy ending? For one, I wouldn't call it a happy ending. I think it's more of a like he might have reached a stable point, but it's Punpun, so whether or not he stays there is up to him. But I think it's also more realistic, to put it bluntly, that bad people are the ones who end up, you know, surviving, to put it bluntly. Like, I feel like that's also, unfortunately, like, a cruel reality for a lot of people. Like, perception. Exactly. I was gonna say, outside of that, another thing of, like, talking about God and Punpun. A lot of people don't really like the God aspect of Punpun because they don't understand it. And I think it's like, well, part of it is you're not meant to really understand it, because Punpun doesn't understand it. Because as a child, trying to understand God is a very difficult thing, and it's very easy for children to see God in sillier, more weird ways because it's hard for them to understand such a nuanced concept. And I think once Punpun got older, and because Punpun, you know, never went to like church or anything like that, but he had his own, you know, he was still raised in a religious society. I think Punpun having that, I think it was really interesting that Punpun went from like feeling sort of, oh my god, the Seabutt's so cute. Hi. I think it was very interesting how Punpun had, you know, at the start it was more of like he didn't want to disappoint the shame of dealing with God, but then as he got older, he did a thing that I feel like a lot of religious people tend to do, where he sort of twisted God into his own moral compass and used the presence of God to justify a lot of his behavior. Of like, for example, when he got the thought to assault that one girl, but it was framed as like God trying to tell him and influence him, and he resisted or whatever. Like, I think he sees it in a way that's like, to him, God becomes more of like his inner, like his intrusive thoughts, I think, for him. And it's easier to rationalize that as like an otherworldly entity as opposed to something that is in your own head. And it was easier for him to justify certain things. It was easier for him to try to ignore certain impulses that he had, because at that point he could blame it on, yeah, God told him to kill people, God told him to assault some women. Like, I think he because he also has the interesting perspective of being a child who was raised in a religious society who didn't go to church or anything like that. So he didn't have specific instruction per se on God. He just knew God is a almighty thing, and God speaks to you sometimes, I guess, you know? Like, he didn't really know enough to like know what, I guess you could say, would clearly be God and clearly not be God. So I think he most likely perceived his intrusive thoughts as God, because he also would not really know what those are, and especially as a kid, those thoughts can be very scary, and it's easier to try to have something to explain, you know? And then as that kind of became like a crutch for him of like, I'm not a bad person because I'm not thinking it, it's this fucking God telling me to do it, and I'm a good person because I'm resisting, you know? Like, I think that's sort of the aspect of it. And I think with the whole like cults that they would show sometimes, it was more of a, those are people in similar circumstances, which are why most of those people were shown not to also be very great people. And it was more of to show that like an early way of like, do you want to be like them? You know? Do you want to be this hyper paranoid, you know, terrified of the thoughts in your head kind of person? I think that's like my interpretation of what he saw as God, because like I don't think there was an actual entity talking to him. I think it was his way of rationalizing his own thoughts, because he was desperate to not be seen as a bad person, you know? Because it took me a little bit to kind of understand the God aspect of it. But I think once I kind of thought of it as like, this isn't actually like supposed to be God, it made a lot more sense. Which is why also, like, I think when he is in points in his life where he is quote unquote better, he doesn't really see God much anymore, because he's not scared of his thoughts at that point, you know? He's not having those thoughts, he's not scared of them. So there's no point. Exactly, yeah. It's him schizo talking to himself, basically. You know, there's a reason too why, like, if he tries to tell other people, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? What are you talking about? Yeah, I thought that was another interesting. I thought the way they went about that was really interesting. I feel like I don't see that kind of portrayal of it. And I think it makes a lot of sense considering how young he is, you know, how young Punpun was when he. Because I do think that is a thing of when children become aware of like God at such a young age, it is a very difficult thing, I think, for a lot of kids to actually like, you know, like kids are at a point where like anything more complicated than Santa Claus, they kind of struggle to understand. And like some kids even struggle with understanding Santa Claus, you know? Like some kids, even with that, it's like a little too overwhelming for them, and you don't even mention his night routines or anything. You're just like, yep, he delivers gifts, and they're like, okay, you know. Anything more than that for like a entity that you're not supposed to see, it tends to, I feel like, be a little much for a lot of kids. So they end up trying to like think about it, and then I think they end up kind of writing God fan fiction in their brains without realizing it. And then you end up with like a fucking young kid talking to God in their head, like they're talking to like Jason Todd or something. You know? Like, I think a lot of kids kind of have that. Especially if you're like, you're raised with religion, but you're not raised with religious institutions, I definitely think, because you're not really given a ton of guidance. You're just told that like God exists and he's all powerful, and if you do bad shit, you're gonna burn in fucking hell. At least in like a Christian sense, you know. Obviously, like Japan is also has a lot more, you know, religious variety. So, but like at least in a Christian sense, being told as a kid like, yeah, God is all powerful and you're gonna burn in hell if you do bad shit, like, yeah. I'm not even kidding. Like, actually, I can think of a really good example of like kids that, because I too was like, my mom was Catholic. My dad was an atheist. My dad is an atheist, but my mom was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school and everything. So I grew up being told about God and all that stuff, and I was given like a Bible. I never read it, but I was given it. And like, I'm not even kidding, to kind of my to prove how like really illustrate the how kids like Alphonse, like you said, like get wacky with it. I remember once when I was in like I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and it was Christmas time, and I was genuinely scared that I was considered like a bad kid, even though I wasn't, and I wasn't gonna get any gifts. So I actually remember, I'm not even shitting you, praying to Santa Claus to forgive me so that I can get gifts and stuff. I dead ass prayed to Santa because I thought, like, in my mind then, like, yeah, okay, if God exists, well, this Santa dude must also be like God. So I just pray to him. Duh. And I fucking prayed to Santa, and I was like, please, Santa, forgive me for what I did. I'm really sorry. Like, oh my fucking, are you like, because I genuinely didn't, I didn't know any of, like, I never went to Bible study, I never went to church, I never went to any of that, so I didn't have any actual detailed knowledge of, like, how God worked. So I just kind of assumed they were, like, I assumed they were, like, brothers, basically, and I was like, okay, if I can get into God contact by praying, I can get into Santa's contact by praying. Like, it's literally like how I genuinely thought about it because I didn't know any other way. So that just as a kid made logical sense to me. Like, okay, I talk to one almighty seen entity that judges my behavior by praying to him. What about the other? Okay, yeah. Dear Santa Christ, please forgive my sins and deliver unto me a Nintendo Switch. Yeah, I was genuinely like, I was like, it's so fucked up. I was literally like crying too while I was doing it. Like I was having like I was having like a religious experience praying to Santa because I thought I was so bad that I wasn't gonna get any Monster High dolls that year, and I was genuinely like devastated because uh I had fights with my mom, and I thought because I had fights with my mom that I would be considered a bad kid. And because I would be considered a bad kid, I wouldn't get anything because, yeah. You know, so again, very hard thing for the youngins to rationalize, like, I had no, that shit was real to me, man. I was sitting on my bed in my little butterfly blankies, like, fucking actually going through it, having like a fucking moment. Because I genuinely thought that I was being like gonna be punished by some all-knowing figure, you know? Like that shit was genuinely so real to me. I was so scared. I stopped believing in like my parents stopped believing. I feel like that's the case for a lot of people. I mean, I didn't really believe in God per se. I just was told that it existed, and because I didn't hear anything else about it, I just assumed for a lot of my early life that like, okay, God exists, yeah. My mom had a pic of Jesus in the kitchen. She had to pick a white Jesus. Um, and then once I got to middle school and my dad started talking to me about concepts like God and things like that, and I found out about how my dad doesn't believe in it because my dad's like, I guess my dad's more agnostic than atheist. My dad's like, he hopes that God is real because if heaven's real, that's pretty sick, but like, he can't bring himself to believe in something with no evidence, you know? He's one of those kind of guys, and so when he explained his perspective to me, that just made objectively more sense, and I was like, okay, sick. Like that's kind of still to this day how I am. Like if heaven's cool, like that's super dope, like, you know, I hold the opinion that maybe there could be something, maybe, because that would be pretty sick, I can't say for sure though, and I can't bring myself to put blind faith. I can't put blind faith into something, like, unless it's my pulls for ZZZ. That's about it. I can't put my blind faith into other things. I can't do it. It's too much. It's too much for me. So I kind of understand Punpun's like seeing God the way he did and like having genuine crash outs as a kid of like the stupidest shit because he thinks that God will care. And then the way he phrases God being like, don't worry about it, bud. Like that's, yeah, that's totally how as a kid I would think God is communicating with me. Like my dad's more in the idea of good of a God particle that started the entire universe. My dad is like, he's a big, my dad is a big science guy. My dad is really into astronomy. So my dad is very much like Big Bang Theory, all that kind of stuff. He does think the God particle thing is more realistic than like, some explanations. Me and my dad's sort of perspective is also just there's so many religions with so many differing gods with so many differing explanations for how everything began that it's foolish to necessarily think that one, like the Judeo-Christian God, might be more legitimate than, a Buddhist God, a Taoist God, a Greek god, an Egyptian god, like that's also kind of our perspective with it too. It's just that there's so many and each one has so many explanations for how things came about that, how can you also, since there's no evidence in general, how can you say that this specific one was that's why we prefer we go the approach of like, if we die and we encounter something, we'll be like, hey man, we held out there was a possibility. So like, let us in, broski. Ooh, ooh. Otherwise, we die, you know? Get into the nitty-gritty of the early history of the Abrahamic religions, you see that it's just one tribe, and many of them won enough wars and became main religious cultures. It was only monotheistic culture, thus their armies rarely fractured. Yeah. Hard to see being the true religion. Yeah, that's kind of my thought. Also, I don't know, this might sound like such a lame explanation for some of my opinions, but like, I also kind of hope that more of a like Egyptian or Greek or Nordic way of seeing gods is real, because I'm gonna be honest, I think it's way cooler when there's like gods for specific things as opposed to just like one god. Like, I know that's probably such a like a fucking like corny nerd ass way to say it, but like, I'm gonna be honest, I just think it's like so fucking cool to be like, yeah, this is the fertility god and the fucking ocean god and the fucking, like, God, that's so cool. Like, yeah, that's sick. And then you can follow one specific god who does one thing. Like, ooh, it's so good. Like, I don't know, that maybe it's just inherently my brain is like, that shit's so much colder that like, I kind of hope that like, yeah, there isn't a true really, because like, I hope I want them to get their flowers, because that shit's cool, Name a fantasy setting with one god, you can't, because it sucks. Imagine dying and being told, hey man, the Greeks had it right the whole time. Want to meet Hades? Dude, like, God, that'd be so fucking sick. Or you get to meet, like, the Egyptian gods. God, they got some cool-ass fucking mythos, man. Just any of those, like, any religion that's built up of gods of various, like, oh God, what's the word? Like, domains, essentially, is so much cooler, like, in my opinion. Like, that shit's so fucking cool. That's so sick. Like, I think that's so awesome. Like, I eat that shit up. Like, in my fantasy world that I ran for a bit before I ended up scrapping things because for my temporary D&D campaign I ran back in the day, mine was like there was like two like founding gods you could say, but actually majority of the gods were basically like human, or not humans, but like mortals that when they died, they just embodied something to such a fucking degree that like they became like the representative of that concept, and like they became the embodiment of said like thing. And because they became that, they were, you know, I guess like more like demigod level territory of like they were so impactful and they just embodied it so much that people at this point would like associate them with that concept. More it was more of a like what's the fucking more of a like God, oh God, Beowulf. It's like Viking, um, basically the concept of like your way of becoming a god, of going to the other side is by being rememberable and by being, you know, passed along through, um, stories and being seen as like such a memorable figure that you become idolized in the way that a god would. Like that's basically what it was for mine. I think Viking reincarnation I think is kind of the like general term because in I got it from Beowulf when I read Beowulf back when I used to do it, because it's like a huge theme of Beowulf is doing enough deeds that you can be considered memorable, because otherwise, if you die and you don't do anything important enough, you die for good because no one's gonna give a shit about you. Elder Scrolls goes way into this sort of thing with the lore. I think Adria are the entities to sacrifice themselves for the world, and the Daedra didn't. Yeah. Yeah, because that's how mine was, where, yeah, it was basically just people were more so turned into gods by the sheer like idolization of other mortals, because they were then basically seen as like the, you know, the face of certain things, you know, which, but no one remembers the Aedra at all in the Elder Scrolls, so I like yours better. Well, because of that, I had it to where like some of them, for one, they were all like, they weren't all the same race, they were all, you know, some of them were all different. And two, like because of it, like for example, like one of them that I really enjoyed a lot was the lore between the the god of the sea and then the god of exploration in mine, because they were two separate things, because it was like a pirate themed campaign, so it was like a very archipelago type world, so exploration was a huge part of it. And the lore between them was that they were actually brothers and they became gods at two separate times, because basically the eldest, which was the sea god, he left and he ended up disappearing, essentially. And the younger brother, spent his entire life exploring the world, searching for him. And the sea god had told his brother back when he left, like, don't ever do this shit, you know, but he disobeyed him to try to find him. And then when he found him, he found that he had basically ascended, and he was stuck at the age he was when he ascended, while his younger brother was now like an older, rugged man. And because both of them were angry of like, you left me, but also like, damn bitch, you couldn't have called, you know, to let me know that like, you doing this now, like I just had to think you were dead for X amount of years, that they ended up fucking fighting, and basically dude just like tanked and, you know, indomitable human spirited his way, because he wanted to spend as much time as he could with his brother, so he prolonged it as long as he could until he eventually died. And then because he dedicated his whole life to exploring the world for his brother. He ascended, and then his brother was like, fuck! Damn it! I'm stuck with this asshole forever! Shit! Like, so you have like so with them now it's like the younger one looks objectively younger than the actual younger brother, and like the younger one is like, yeah, that's my brother, he's cool, and then the older one is just fucking seething that he disobeyed him when he's like, you could have just lived a normal life and gotten married and had a family instead you do this bullshit, and it's very funny, like high level religious campaign. The only downside is I worked really hard into the religious system, and then none of my players chose to follow a god. Yeah, it was heartbreaking for me. Literally none of my players chose to follow a god. And the worst part is all of them played basically angry atheists too. No, not a single cleric, and all of them were like, the gods are stupid. So none of them really gave a shit, except for like our smart man guy, but he only cared in a I'm trying to solve a mystery way, not in a like he actually cared. So there was like a point where they met the exploration god, and they were like, he is really cool, but in character, they just acted like they didn't give a fuck because none of them actually cared. Which sucked because like the main plot line, at least, like I'm not even kidding, like they met two separate gods, and one of them did like actual like god level feats in front of them, and yeah, it was very unfortunate for me. One of the characters was an atheist because like, okay, Boyfie was in it. Boyfie's character was he was the smart guy that was trying to figure out shit, so like he was like trying to figure stuff out, but he was also like a Dale Gribble style conspiracy theorist guy, so like his was funny. But like the others just did not care, or they actively were aggro against any gods just because they were like, I don't like gods because they control people. And it's like, but they don't in this world. You don't actually have to follow any of them. Like, you don't actually have to. It's just most people do, but like they don't actually like force you to do anything in this world. Well, but they're God. No, but they don't though. They You don't have to be aggro to them. Most of them don't actually do that. The thing that sucked too is, I'm not even kidding too, I actually gave specific I actually like something I do for my games is I give people actual bonuses even if they're not like a cleric for following certain gods. Like if they like in my game it was going to be like, if you follow a god, after you follow them and like devote yourself for a specific amount of time, you get some kind of like character feature. And kind of like the more you do things in their name and the more you like, you know, do your best to be like an asset to them, they reward you with even more like character perks and things like that. Nope, just didn't care. Didn't just didn't care. They could have been level 5 rock and god perks, but no. No. It was so disappointing. I spent so long. Yeah, I just kind of was like, damn, I put so much work into this. I'm not even kidding. I even had like mapped out like which gods hated who and all that shit, because like that was gonna be so funny, and man, that shit that was kind of soul crushing. Still overall enjoyed what I was able to do, but yeah, part of the reason kind of why I ended up scrapping it is because I had built so much around that, and considering that nobody, and no matter how much convincing I tried, nobody budged on it, that like, okay, well now like a huge chunk of what I put work into is effectively meaningless now, you know? Because, like, I tried really hard to, like, slay them even, and no, nothing. I was like, oh, damn it. It happens. Honestly, that's part of the reason why, like, despite playing D&D, I don't know how much I'll DM stuff, because I think a lot of stuff I enjoy, a lot of the people I play D&D with don't enjoy. To put it bluntly, like, I'm not religious. I love religion and religious systems in D&D. I love religious fantasy world building. I like to play characters who will, if they go through a traumatic event, it's actually going to affect them and not just be something they brush off within a session or two and go back to haha funny. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. We're supposed to tank everything emotionally, and like you get one session to mourn and then you got to push through, you know? Like I like covering more, I guess, like fucked up topics. No, because I think because a lot of people, well, it was also my first proper D&D campaign, so I also was still figuring out exactly what I liked. Because, like, I was telling Aki that, like, of all the campaigns, I actually think the Castlevania one has been really refreshing for me, because the Castlevania one is probably the closest to playing in a campaign that suits my taste that I like. Because it's a darker campaign, so it's more serious. There is funny moments here and there too, but ultimately, like, the subject matter and stuff is a lot more serious. Also, I think our party is good because I think our party take it seriously. Like, Alphonse, like, you play the jokey character. You play the guy that makes a lot of the bits, you know? And that works because we're not an entire party of people who are just trying to make bits and gags nonstop. And, like, also, even though you are joking, because, like, joking out of character is one thing, but I'm talking about, like, you know, I make a ton of jokes out of character. But, like, in character specifically, like, you know, like, BZ knows when to, you know, let someone have the stage, to put it bluntly. You know when okay, this is not the time to interject. This person's clearly, 'cause another pet peeve I really have is when, like, someone is like, oh, I'm really excited for this thing to happen in the game because this is what my character backstory is related to, and I'm super excited. And then when they finally get to it, the party members kind of interject themselves into it nonstop and end up kind of cucking them from getting the full experience. Like, in the Jujutsu Kaisen themed one I did with Aki, like, I sometimes had issues of my whole thing I was waiting for was, like, her clan was really abusive, and when I finally got to meet them, a lot of the times the party wanted to try to, like, jump in to defend her and stuff, which, like, I mean, I get, but it would kind of cuck what I had been planning and openly discussing that I had been planning for, like, 6 months, you know? Like, because I don't know, maybe this is, like, a me thing, but, like, I don't want... My thing, too, is, I guess, like, something that I guess maybe... I don't know if this is, like, controversial in a D&D sense, but unless our characters are established as friends, I don't personally go about it with the mindset that our characters in the party are all friends, unless there are things that happen that make me feel like, okay, they're friends at this point. Like, Freya would not consider the party her friends at this point because she's known them for 3 business days. You know, I don't even know if they've known each other for 3 days. They might have only known each other for a day or two, you know? like, that's, you know, she considers you, like, her acquaintance that she's traveling with, but if something happens, she's not gonna pull some, like, friendship is magic bullshit to, like, you know, because realistically, like, why would these characters care so much about each other, if that makes sense, you know? Because that's a problem I have, I think. Well, apparently, because every game I play, I end up running into that problem where, like, something happens and then people are like, what? It's like, well, why would my character really truly give a fuck, honestly? Like, outside of, like, I don't want someone to die, yeah, obviously, but, like, if I see, you know, something, okay, but why, if my character's going through it, why is she going to confide in a party member that she's known for one business day and they've only had 2 interactions, you know? Why would she do that? You know, I personally don't like doing the, like, the part where a party where everyone's now instantly ride or die BFFs. I don't really like that. I find that kind of boring, personally. And a lot of D&D parties, I feel like, get into that. I only cook if it's not Sorrente, like, your character's lovely. I mean, yeah, like, you cooking her making moves on the Catboy was, like, funny. In a, like, fuck you, you know, kind of way, but, like, it was funny, you know? Like, that's fine, stuff like that, but, like, I don't know, especially, too, because I think also for me, like, God, this also might sound a little, potentially, I feel like I don't like playing in parties where everybody is just, like, to put it bluntly, a goody two-shoes, you know? I've played in a couple of those, and I find it pretty annoying after a while, when, like, everybody is a ride or die, everybody is a, you know, oh, you say something mean, we're all gonna jump in and defend, you know? Like, I'm not saying that people have to be evil or anything, but, like, I think that's why I like our party for Castlevania, because, like, BC's not a, you know, they're, you know, he's got some quirks, you know, like, Javix is still, like, you know, he's, because of how logical he is, he's not the greatest at explaining things. Lucifer is still rather closed off as well, you know, in a lot of ways. So is Freya. Like, I think it works, you know, it's more interesting. I had players get in a heated romantic relationship where they would die for each other after meeting 4 days ago. I hated it. Yeah, the only time I've had a character that did, like, I guess you could say a quick run romance was my character that dated where Aki took Igris from solo leveling and put him in the campaign, because it was literally a, essentially demigod, top 10 most powerful dudes in the realm. I got, like, 1 week to spend with him, and then he was gonna fuck off for I don't know how many months until I could see him again. So I had to, like, lock him in, you know? But, like, in the Jujutsu Kaisen campaign, where the NPC I romance is actually someone who's a part of the general group, even though, like, he's a part of the party, even though he's an NPC, because she sees him, like, every day, I think they didn't have their first kiss till, like, 3 months or so into the game, you know? Like, they didn't have sex till, like, 6 months into the campaign. Will kill for you guys, but only because y'all didn't immediately kill him for his looks. I mean, yeah, but also, like, that's a reason, you know? Like, that's an understandable reason for, to put it bluntly, like, in a, like, the nicest way, BZ is a very simple person, you know? And that, like, that's all he needs, you know? And that's fine. Like, that makes sense for him, considering what he's, you know, clearly gone through. Versus, like, you know, Lucifer, it makes sense in that he's a knight, and knights do that kind of shit, you know? But, like, you know, listen. Yeah. Freya was like, okay, children, get the fuck out of here and stuff like that, you know? Because, like, they're kids. They're you know, they're kids, of course. But there's a reason why when Jevix was getting fucked up, like Freya's like, I'm gonna stay on the banister and shoot. Like, I don't really want to like get up there where I can get like fucking chopped. You know, I'm gonna stay like where it's safe. Like, I'm still gonna help, but like, you know, I'm gonna like stay. You know, I'm gonna stay back here. You know, she's gonna help, but she's not gonna like, I'm gonna run in and tank everything, or like, no. His views and understanding of certain things are very yeah, exactly. I kind of got that vibe. Like, it makes sense for, see, that's the thing though, it makes sense for that, because that's kind of how your character, but on the flip side, because he is very childish, he also, as you show, experiences things like rage in a significantly, you know, he is way quicker to jump to that kind of stuff because he is very simple and childlike, and that, you know, he kind of is like, okay, all right, is it clobbering time? Like, you know, and versus like someone like Freya, who is more, you know, she, like, Frey is the kind of character where she is, you know, she's gonna, like, obviously she's gonna, like, protect kids, she's gonna protect the party and stuff like that, but, you know, this world is rough, and, like, she's not necessarily gonna go out of her way non-stop for everyone, you know, because it is a very, like, you gotta protect yourself, you know, a kind of core of, and that's part of the reason of her being a sex worker, is a core of Freya is the self-preservation of, she is going to inherently be a bit more protective of herself, because like her being a sex worker is literally like survival, you know, like survival is kind of a big concept of her character, of like surviving in a harsh world where most people would probably want to kill an attractive woman traveling by herself, you know? She has to align herself with people who could protect her. What's the easiest way to do that as a pretty woman? You know? I very much went that route with why she does what she does, which, like, I don't mind saying that because, like, I've kind of, like, alluded to it quite a few times already in her interactions with some of her clientele, you could say. Which is why, like, I wanted to play her as a sex worker, because I thought that would be a realistic aspect of society in that kind of world. Because that is a way that a lot of women and certain men and, you know, youngins, unfortunately, you know, protect themselves basically, and like do stuff to give them like immunity. BZ still thinks Freya is a fair maiden. And I will say Freya does, I will say Freya does find it very, like, because I will say, like, and because Aki asked if, like, she would ever make moves on the party, and, like, I know, like, she wouldn't for BZ, because I feel like BZ, in a weird way, she does kind of see him like a child, and that, like, the way he talks to, by calling her fair maiden and stuff, like, it's very endearing to her. She likes the sort of innocence that he has, and she sees him in the way that, like, a mother sees their kid, you know. I think she definitely would go more like big sister motherly towards him. And then like the motive I had, yeah, that's the vibe she feels towards BZ, of like, she thinks it's very endearing. That's why like she hasn't mentioned anything detailed of what she does to him, because she's like, okay, he's a little big guy, you know. He's a little guy who's also very big, but you know, he's just a little lad. Because that is a thing of like, I've cooked up a lot for her of like why she's the way she is. So I think it'll be very interesting, depending on whenever we get to the point where the party starts kind of finding out. Because I cooked the story for her, man. I'm so excited. I think, in my opinion, Freya has potential to be like my favorite D&D character I've played, depending on how things develop. I put a lot into her. And I think she covers a lot of interesting topics that I've wanted to cover in campaigns, but just because they were very light-hearted ones, like, it just wouldn't have worked, you know, it wouldn't have really fit quite the same. So I'm very excited, which I'm very excited for tonight. And like, more about Freya and then Lucifer might shine. Lucifer that might shine. Yeah, because like I'm gonna be honest, I was joking to Aki about how, like, because, you know, Lucifer is still very closed off because he is a knight and he is a noble. He knows how to present himself, where he knows what to say and what he should probably keep to himself. And, you know, very clearly he's keeping his cards close, you know, about certain things. He doesn't want to give too many details about himself. Like, I've sent Aki a couple times when we were talking the meme of the guy, the detective from Dexter that's always, like, sizing him up. And I was like, that's Freya trying to figure out what exactly is going on here, because BZ and Jevix are more open books in comparison. And I feel like Freya and Lucifer are both mutually trying to, like, figure each other out, because both of them are the, like, cards close to them kind of people. And I think it's very funny that I think both of them are actively doing that to each other. Like, Jevix and BZ are mostly like, yeah, we'll just, you know, like, super cool. And then we're just like, okay, looks at each other. Do you have anything you want to add to this conversation? I think it's very funny. I think I like that we have the mix of the two, more on the more on the, not lighthearted, but more on the comedic side, more on the honest and more open and more, like, immediately jumping into the, like, we're more friendly dynamic. And then the other half, which is the more, we're raised to be more to ourselves and to, like, be very cautious of what we say and things like that. I think having that, like, split in the party is very fun. I think it's very interesting. Especially too because, like, Lucifer has it in the, like, it's just because, you know, he's of someone of importance that he's told. Like, I imagine because since he's a knight and a noble, you know, he's got certain things that are, you know, he's not gonna out everything about his, you know, work and shit. And then Freya, who's, like, miskeeper of secrets over here of the amount of people she's had clients of, so she's also like, I have things I could maybe say, but if I out them, I lose my client. I don't want to do that. Because you're like, oh boy, I love my new friends who definitely aren't going to reveal something shocking that would cause me to change how I look at them. If Freya doesn't have anything like that, no, she's just, Freya, it's just more of a, like, what's, you know, the presentation of what she gives to people versus what is she actually like. It's more like that vibe with Freya. Freya, I wasn't joking with the joke of, like, dang, Freya showing up to, like, the really cool we're different party and she's just a chick, you know, but her, it's more of the, like, what's the personification of the always on the clock, always looking for maybe new clients, new ways to be useful, and what's, like, actually her. Is there even still her deep down in there somewhere? Or is she just her work persona, you could say? It's more like that vibe. I'll give, like, a little tease. But I'm really... Freya, PC and Freya eating people out, but in two different ways. Truly. Truly. If she ever sees him do that, she's 100% gonna make a comment like that, and then you'll be like, huh? And she'll be like, huh? Yeah, I'm so excited, yeah, which, by the way, you know, D&D on Aki's channel tonight. We'll ping the Discord and tweet about it, because, yeah, it's on his channel. Though, I will say too, I do want to mention, and, like, Alphonse, you know this, because I talked about it with you, and, like, some of the other guys, like, Alphonse and, besides you, like, Aki and Shiro know too. I think within the next, like, week or two, I might stream a little less, just because mentally kind of going through it a bit, so I might do some either, like, shorter streams, or just have a few, like, instead of doing 5 days, do maybe, like, 3 or 4, because kind of, like, mentally going through it a bit, and I don't want to completely take a hiatus, but I also don't want to overwhelm myself, so... I still will, no matter what though, be there for D&D. Like, even if I don't stream on a Thursday, I'll still be there for D&D later that evening. So that'll still be like, you know, even if I'm not streaming on a Thursday, I'll still be there for D&D unless like something really happens. But I'm thinking of trying to like slow it a little bit because yeah, I'm kind of going through it a bit. Which is why, like, I kind of planned in general for having this be a shorter stream. Every day sounds nuts to me. It's mostly just since I don't have a job, it gives me, like, something to do, basically. Like, it gives me something to do that makes me feel like at least I'm being productive. That's mostly why I did it, honestly, is because, like, I'm someone who, if I don't have a routine, I start to lose my mind. So... it gave me something where, like, at this time, I have to do something, you know, so that's mostly why I did it, honestly, is to kind of, like, fulfill the lack of, like, an actual work schedule. But I'm gonna try that, and plus also because, you know, I think if I'm not having fun, people aren't gonna have fun, you know? I'm gonna try to work on some things, figure out some more stuff, because like I've been wanting to start my political like Monday streams. It's just since I haven't been in the greatest mood, I've like I don't want to start it on a bad note of like me not feeling the greatest because it's something I really want to do and I want to do it good. And like I want to actually like I want to put effort into it and have like a whole like setup for my stream for it. Like I want to make like an actual like effort with it. So I don't want to like just randomly do it on a Monday where I'm feeling kind of dog water or something, you know, that would be unfortunate. So I'm hoping maybe that'll help a bit. Because I figured this would just, I would also do like a bit. Yeah, of course. I'll see you later, Alphonse. News articles to suggest? I did in the Discord post, I did have like in the Discord server, there is like a section where you could put news articles for me. And I did also make it to where there's certain like categories that you can tag them as. So if it's like crime or specific like political election, environment, all that kind of stuff, I could quickly search through. As for like specific topics, honestly, it's more so just like if there's anything you come across that you think is like really important that I might not see potentially, because also like at least for you, I know you Pumpkin have more international knowledge, to put it bluntly, than I do. I don't mind talking about international stories, like I don't mind talking about Palestine, of course, or talking about like global south, or talking about shit happening in Europe or the Congo, you know. I don't mind talking about that stuff. It's just because I'm not as knowledgeable in it. It's a little harder for me to find like good sources and stuff. That's the reason why I did, because like I will for it have like sources up so that I'm not totally talking out of my asshole. So like if you have like good sources or things for like, oh, there's this thing going on overseas that is important, like you can totally put it there. I have like an international tag, I believe, on there. That's totally fine. It's just, yeah, the reason I might not talk about it as much is because I don't know as much of what like magazines and what news sources from other countries are good ones. And sometimes it's hard to find conflicting information, you know. Domestically, again, my focus is on my primary area is I know a lot of like election in general, like political, like the political side in terms of like Congress people, you know, state representative, all that stuff. Like I do know a lot about that, but also like domestic terrorism acts. So anything involving like mass shooting, stuff like that, I would definitely like come across very easily myself just with what I cover. Honestly, it's just like I'm pretty much fine with anything. Like even if you have like if there's specific maybe like LGBT issues that maybe I might not be aware of, or you know, just anything like that. Frankly, it's mostly just there in case there's something that you think I might not come across, or you know, hey, in case you don't know, this is something actually really important, you know, things like that. It's more so for that, because I might not cover everything because, you know, I probably, since my area of focus is more like elections and the political structure and domestic terrorism and stuff, I would probably lean more just terms of personal bias towards those kind of things like crime and all that stuff. So it could cause me to maybe miss out on like other categories that I'm not as well versed in. Yeah, of course. And like I'll look at it before stream, you know, and look at the article, gather any supplemental materials too. If it's especially like a really serious issue, like I could pull up research papers, I could go that level. Like I could go full send with it. Like I really can, depending on like the seriousness of the issue. Also, if there's just something that's kind of like funny and stupid that you want to throw in there too, like I don't mind doing that too, talking about like a stupid story that's like just kind of, you know, like that's also funny too. I don't mind that kind of stuff. But that's sort of what it's there for, and I can go through and just collect them every week. So if there's anything you find interesting, you could always pop it in there. If there's any issues with the forum, just let me know and I'll edit it as needed. It should be set up good, but just in case. You could always just message the general or even like just send me a DM letting me know and I'll look at it. I trust messages from you. I know I know you're not some like Discord Nitro scammer. But I will say too, I probably will I've been trying to think of what to do for like next manga. And honestly, I know Ultra's gonna be upset if he doesn't get to voice his opinion as a certified manga boy. So I think what I might do is I think I'll make a channel specifically for manga club stuff, and then I might ping specifically like some of you who were here, and then just have you, if you guys have any specific suggestions, or if you have any now, you could tell me. Because I know Ultra will be sad if he doesn't get to voice his opinion on what we should read next. So I'm gonna at least reach out to him so that he can give me his specific, because otherwise I think he's gonna crash out. Because he's been so like, I'm gonna get to contribute to the next topic. So if you have any ideas, you could just like, until I get the channel set up, you could always just like send it. Like 10 manga and Punpun might be the only one I actually finished. Okay, then if you want, I can just see what Ultra pops up in his dome since he's super excited. And then otherwise, I have some that I'm thinking of. I'm also thinking of having us do a more lighter one since we started off with a banger of fucked up, you know, kind of alternate potentially. So I'll message him and I'll get like a channel set up too, so that way too, if you guys want to like discuss things with each other about it. But oh, it's my friends I read. I trust them not to recommend slop, but okay. Yeah, I'll get a channel set up sometime today and then you can post it there. And I'll take note of it and then I'll reach out to Ultra. See what he thinks. I know he's gonna be so pissed that he missed it. But I probably will go ahead and end here because I also just need to make sure I'm mentally prepared for D&D tonight since it's gonna be a pretty big collab. And when it comes to bad mental spots, collabs are a little rough for me. So, if that's cool, I'm gonna see if there's anyone. You know what? I'll go ahead and throw people to dad. I'll throw people to dad. But I appreciate it. Tomorrow I'll pick up with Silent Hill. We will be doing that. I'm really excited. So Silent Hill will be super fun. Back to fucked up. But I really liked this. I can't wait to do more of it. So yay. On to next month. But all right, I will see you tomorrow potentially for Silent Hill. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoyed.